Hello and welcome to AWFJ Presents. I'm Jennifer Marin, President of the Alliance of Women Film Journalists. Together with Kino Lorber, we are presenting a curated series of outstanding films by some of the world's leading female filmmakers. Here to discuss Denis Gamze Ergüven's 2015 MUSTANG are AWFJ curators Sandie Angulo Chen and Ulkar Alakbarova. We hope you will enjoy the discussion. We hope you will enjoy MUSTANG, and we hope you will join us for all of the films in the AWFJ Presents series. Thanks for being with us now, and take it away, ladies.
Well, we hope that you've enjoyed this presentation of MUSTANG, and I'm so excited to speak about the film with my colleague Ulkar, and I think we'll just get right into it and at first discuss the setting. And Ulkar, I know that you know much more about the setting in Turkey than I do, so I'm going to let you go first and sort of set the tone for what we've just seen and the specifics of the context of where it was shot.
Well, the first part is that, as you already know, and as the audience already know, that it's shot in the northern part of the Turkey, and that's where the story takes place. Just to note one thing, that it's the film itself is the story. It was based on Deniz Gamze Ergüven's personal life. So even though it does not really say that the year and everything, maybe she just wanted to avoid all the controversial or the scandal in Turkey because of her background. But the context is that things like this is happening. Like even if you look up even on Google or Wikipedia, it says that the age for the marriage in Turkey is the 18. But unfortunately, in certain part of Turkey, it happens when the girls are forced to get married even at 16, even younger. But for that, obviously, there should be a kind of the court order for that. The judge should allow it, but in Mustang, we don't know that. But maybe it's just not really important because, again, because of the timing when it was shot or the year that it was taking place, it did not really go into the specifics. But we can just imagine that it was one of those days when they just could avoid the judge's order, and the Uncle Earl can do anything he wants just because the girls played with the boys. Just an innocent play between girl and boy, and then they ended up being confined and forced into this house like a prison. And unfortunately, that's the reality. Even the other day when we were talking about is like even in Turkey right now, I don't want to go into the negative part, and I don't want to discourage anybody. Like Turkey is an absolutely amazing country. It's culturally is rich. There are so many nice people, but unfortunately, there are situations like when, say, even the woman after getting married, they cannot even get divorced. So we don't know what will happen with the marriage of the four remaining girls. Like that, well, obviously the two are escaped, but we just can assume that hopefully that something will be fine. But with one sister that married somebody she cared about, I'm more hopeful. But with the other sister that she got married with the guy that, I mean, she just met, you're not sure. But unfortunately, there are some, the context of the story, again, it's a bit dark. And unfortunately, there is a reality to it. Whatever we want, even for myself as someone who is, the Turkey is my neighbor country, I wish I never had to watch the movie like this, but it does happen quite often that we can imagine.
Yeah, and Ulkar, one of the things that we spoke about earlier is the fact that even though she is portraying this rural small town, that is why there's such a contrast with Istanbul and why the girls in the end are trying to flee there, because the director is not trying to say that every single person in every single part of Turkey believes this way, which is why at the end, there's that very hopeful moment when the teacher, who's obviously living in the city in a much more progressive environment, when she opens the door and is so welcoming. And that's sort of evocative to me because in addition to it being the very last scene of the film, the director manages to insert these moments of hope even in what is really dire circumstances for the girl. And we talked about some of those, and I just think that they're important to bring up because even though this is in many ways a heartbreaking film, it's also a hopeful film. And I love that she kind of makes sure that we all know that even though it's not going to be all okay, and that there's great trauma and sadness in each of the girls' lives, and certainly in what happens to the third sister, that there's also hope. And whether it's, just the smile on the teacher's concerned face, or it's the smile, I know we talked about this, on the truck driver's face, there are just these lovely little moments. And to sort of circle back to this whole idea of, in addition to it being set in this somewhat sort of patriarchal and oppressive sort of atmosphere, the setting is still very much the idea of a coming of age film, of these sisters who are so close because they're orphaned and living in these very particular circumstances. So why don't we talk a little bit about the theme of sisterhood, coming of age, and also the feminist undertones of the movie, as particularly as shown through the eyes of the youngest sister.
Exactly. And that's a very good point, because you see, I know that Mustang is mostly considered as a coming of age feminist story, but in reality is it's the story of the survival. It's about surviving the unwanted marriage, unwanted relationship with somebody you don't know where you're gonna end up in the end, right? Even for like Lala is I mean, what she does in the film, how she risks everything. Like she realizes that she needs to uh, analyze, she needs to plan every single move. But at some point, remember the scene when she was cutting her hairs, like she was preparing everything, all the settings. Like she is actually brilliant. But I think what did she get that from? The idea is that when she saw that her sister, especially when the one that committed suicide, right? When she died, she realized that she has to that maybe I think she was more confident about herself, but she was not really sure about Noor and what will she will do if she's forced into the marriage. Right? And she decided that she took the matter into her own hand, saying that, listen, you know what? You want to marry this marriage? She said, no, of course. Then just help me. Right? She really orchestrated this. And the fact that you mentioned that there's a sisterhood, like they were really close. But one of the most heartbreaking scenes is when Lola narrates the story. And when she says, remember the scene when they gathered all together? And she said that that was the last time we were all together. Oh my God. That scene alone is literally, it gives you an idea that something is going to happen. It makes you to be ready for something dramatic, but you still do not expect what else. But and then you just mentioned about the theme of the film, like it is the hopeful story. Yes, there's a sad part of it about it. There's a somebody has to lose the life to point out a direction for somebody else. Like in this case, is the Lale, right? But there's a hope, because at the end when she goes on and knocks on the door of the teacher, English teacher, when she looks at her, embraces her, and she says, okay, whatever happened, she just accept both of them, right? Or even the Uncle Earl, right? He's a bad guy. I mean, I'm not saying he's a bad guy. He he raised them, right? He did his best, but at the same time, he's too conservative. He's too old-fashioned, and he cannot comprehend the idea that the girls can date the boy. Is just, or they need to get married, and he takes all this drastic uh, steps like towards them or against them. That's really not nice. And unfortunately, another aspect that I don't believe we talked about it, but the men in that culture, they never learn. the lesson, unfortunately. And that when one of the sisters dies, she should have just step back away and just slow down and give the other girl space. But she did not do that. She continued doing this, and if she had got a chance and he had a gun, he would probably kill one of them, because that's how determined he was to push his own narrative into their own life.
Yeah.
Like I said,
Oh, go ahead.
yes, sorry, I'm just, it's, there's so many things about Mustang that we can talk about, but there's a good side and bad side. But at the end of the day, it's a story of survival, the coming of age story, yes, but it's also about not just a feminist story where the girls say that I don't want to get married, because they never said that we don't want to get married. They just want to get married on their own term when they're ready. And
Right. No, absolutely. And honestly, for me as a mother, and I know you are too, it was heartbreaking to see the stark difference between the scenes with the sisters together, even once they're sort of imprisoned in their grandmother's home. The scenes are sun dappled, the light on each of them, and the way that they're playing together and cuddling and just being silly. It's beautiful, right? Whether they're just pretending to swim because they're not allowed outdoors, or they're sort of just laying on top of each other. It was so realistic. And I think that that was her ability to capture that in actors that who were not professionals, I think is amazing. And I think that's a good transition to talk about the performances, because as I've already mentioned, most of the actors were not professionals, especially the girls. I think that you found that only that middle sister, Eche, had been in something beforehand. So the fact that Lale, who really does sort of carry the film on her shoulders, the fact that that actress had never been in anything and that she was so young, it's pretty remarkable that she was able to capture all of those emotional beats throughout the film. And I think all of the sisters, they just acted in this completely naturalistic way. And I haven't read about whether she did intensive rehearsal time with them or anything like that, but they were just fabulous. And those scenes just captured the sort of everyday reality of being a sister and being one of many sisters, because there's 5 of them.
yeah, and that's a good point about that. Even the non-actors, that they have delivered that organic chemistry. You know, when you watch them, they're so fluent. They understand each other, and that's what it is. It's uh, I don't believe, well, actors probably will be able to deliver this, but again, when you're a non-actor and you're just trying to adjust the storyline and you just get into this, they kind of understood the concept of it. And obviously, Lala is just incredible. She is the driver of the story. She's obviously the narrator of the story. She is the only one who knows how the story will end. And she so cleverly just takes us into that direction, slowly building it up and making it like a so fabulous. So like, I mean, obviously, I'm speechless. The way she, even the scene when, remember when she was driving the car, likely she was trying to learn to drive a car. It was a big deal, right? But but in and that's in her, you are seeing that hope, like, you know, that she is trying to use every single tool that she has available to do something big, not in her life, but in her life, in the life of her sister. And if she could, if the middle sister wouldn't kill herself, she would probably help her to escape as well. And even the scene when she, like, what I liked about the storyline between Lale and Yasin, the truck driver, that they developed that kind of friendship. And when you look at Lale as a non-actor, she she showed what does it mean to have that innocent relationship or the friendship with the boy or with the man much older than her, but she never made any hint, nothing that she would probably say, okay, I will do something in return if you help me this and that. She clearly was like showing that I am still a child. And even the Yasin always obviously understood that. And that's what we talked about the other day, that with Yasin, that not every man in the story in Mustang was a villain, right? Yasin was also from the conservative area, from the same area, from the small village, but how progressive he was, right? He just looked at her as a big brother. And that scene is just, even right now I'm like getting emotional when, remember when he saw her, he was like, gave her that hug, she jumped like a, oh my God, that was really, really touching. And that moment is only non actor can deliver. I mean, obviously, the Yasin, the actor, he used to perform before, but again, that chemistry with Lala is just even more. So it's just beautiful.
Yeah, again,
Beautiful.
I just thought Yasin was a wonderful counterpoint to the other men that we've seen in the film, right? Because there's Uncle Errol, who's sort of testosterone raging the whole film, very macho, very much about what women and girls should do and should not do, right? He wouldn't even allow them to watch the soccer game. And again, just showing one more time exactly how clever and bold Lale was, that once he wouldn't allow her to even watch, she just comes up with this plan to actually go in person, which is so much, in some ways, worse than if she had just been allowed to sit there with the men and watch the game. But and that's again remarkable because you're seeing the film through the eyes of the youngest sister in so many ways, and the director to be able to trust that young actress to perform and to deliver when she didn't have experience, it's pretty remarkable. And like you
Um,
said, that moment with Yasin, who had the longer hair and was thought of as, I mean, even one person when she was desperately trying to find which phone number was right, and he says, oh, I don't have any queer drivers, at least that's what it says in the subtitles. So you know
exactly.
that he was already a little bit edgier than most of the men in his town because he didn't have a short cropped haircut. We don't know anything about his personal life, but we know that he was willing, in this very sweet, platonic, older brother way, wasn't expecting anything else from her, and just really wanted her to be safe and happy. And I think that that was one of the most important sort of relationships in the movie, other than the sisters and the one that they have with each other and their grandmother, because even the two husbands, we don't really know anything about them.
No.
They're not really that important, other than to explain that one was a love match and one was a forced match. And it actually made me think, I don't know if you're on the movie of the week team, but we had just seen this movie called Knots that discussed the sort of epidemic of forced marriage and how it exists in the United States. So even though this is very particularly set in northern Turkey, in rural Turkey, the themes are universal because this is happening to girls all over the world. And it's happening here in the United States, and where you live in Canada, there are communities of very conservative, usually religious people who put an extra emphasis on purity culture. And once you do that, as the uncle says, if the girl does not conform, then she's considered sullied, right? He actually says that to his own mother, to the grandmother. He says, if she's sullied, it's on you. And it's just
Exactly.
remarkable to see that, because most of us don't live our lives that way. But in these small communities, a girl and a woman's worth is completely caught up in her virginity and in her being presentable to a man as a wife and then as a mother. And there really are no other options. So the fact that the youngest sister could see the options, and not just see them, but work toward actually making them a possibility and having an alternative to this oppressive imprisonment that she was left more and more alone in as each sister left the family. I just think that it's just so important to really think about that. and what it means from like a worldwide perspective, not just to say, oh, this only happens in countries like Turkey. No, it's happening even in our own countries.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the beauty of the story of the Mustang, is that it opens up those gray areas, the areas that some people don't want to talk about their own country. And I'm glad that you brought this up, because in Canada it does happen too. It happens everywhere, right? It's just they pretend that it is not. And then they say, oh, here's a Turkey, it's happening there, how bad it is, right? It is bad, but it's pretty awful out there too, right? Everywhere. And and that's why I believe that audience need to give it a shot. I'm glad that the people saw it, but I also would love this film to be seen by wider audience, because it teaches many things. It teaches to be patient. It teaches to be um, not to be judgmental. It shows that you need to have an open mind, and that the world changes. If the world changes, we need to move on with that world. We need to change with that world as well, right? We cannot just stuck somewhere in conservatism, or somewhere in a dark age where we think that the man can have a power over woman. And that's what it is. Like, I remember the scene when they were checked for the virginity twice, but the man has never been checked, right? It's the world that we need to open up this conversation, even after Mustang or any other movie, right? That talks about the same theme or close to it. That hey, we have to do something about this. We need to change. If we see things like this that is happening, maybe we can pull out those people and talk about this. And this is not right, because at the end of the day, we don't know who will take the gun and shoot himself or herself. You never know, because it's not just you know because woman not is not the only one as a victim, as a man too, because the guy that is forced into marriage, you don't know what's going on in their mind, and they're also getting traumatized by living with somebody that they're forced to live, right? I just want to I just want to say that the man is not the only one who is like a villain in here. I am just going outside of the context of Mustang and say that why this film is worth seeing, because it just there are too many things we can talk about. Too many things.
And absolutely, it was so brave of the director, Denis Gamze Ergüven. I know I'm not saying that perfectly right, but the fact that she made this film, and the fact that that it was her first film. This is her directorial debut, and the fact that she was able to express so many themes and really leave audiences with so much to think about with her first film. I just think it's so noteworthy that it's such a successful first film, and that doesn't happen very often, especially with the film from a foreign film for us that would have to be read with subtitles, and a lot of audiences aren't always willing to put in the time to see a movie that portrays pain and abuse and all of the heavier issues. But once you're actually watching the movie, it's not just about the pain, and it's not just about the trauma. It's also about the beautiful aspects of their relationship as sisters, and that deep joy that you can really almost only have when you're young, before you have the responsibilities of being an adult, being in a marriage. And that's why I think she did it so brilliantly, that once the sisters got married, you basically never saw them again. It's not that they were irrelevant or that the younger sisters didn't care about them, but they were off, like you were saying, in this completely different context, becoming women in the community. And the girls left behind were truly left behind in this other space, just basically waiting their turn, as Lala said, in the home that had become nothing more than a wife factory. So I do think that in the end, this is a movie that, although it deals with very heavy issues and themes, it leaves you in a hopeful place, that you think these younger two sisters will have a happier and more fulfilled rest of their adolescence, of course, because they're not being forced to marry before they're ready, and that they'll have more opportunities to go to school, which they obviously really liked and were not able to continue to do once they were kept in the home. So do you have any, final thoughts or favorite moments that you want to share before we say goodbye?
Well, again, one of my favorite moments in the film is when they went to watch the soccer. By the way, just to bring this up, that during the shooting of the film, they would not allow to go into the stadium, and that's why Deniz, Gamze, Ergüven, she sent the girls to watch the soccer, and they used the actual footage. They ended up being on the big screen.
Mm.
So that's and that was one of my favorite scenes when they were in there, and when the grandmother, when the woman saw them on TV, they were like shocked. And what they did what really they should have done. They just they just took the power off from the entire area. They remember they destroyed it.
No, yes, that is such a great scene when the auntie, the
There's
elder who had been
the
teaching
auntie,
them to
yes.
cook and to clean, when she realizes, oh no, they cannot be seen on the Jumbotron or whatever it's called. We have to get rid of all the power, and not just in the house, but in the entire neighborhood, because they knew that the men would just go to the next house over. So that's such a great scene, because the whole time you think these women are really just trying to force them to learn these things to be wives, which they are. But in that scene, you did see them subvert the patriarchy in the only way that they could think of, because they didn't want the girls to be the brunt of the uncle's anger. So they knew, it's like instinctively, they knew what that one auntie knew what needed to be done, and she just did it without even consulting with anybody. So that was
Exactly.
another great scene. Yes.
So I think that's I think what I would like to say is just with this film, like do not give up. There's issues like this happen, and there's always the right moment to make the decision and do something about it, change the perspective. For me, it's really hard to say that because I've never been in that kind of situation. But as someone who has a little daughter, I know that what I could do and what words I could tell her to make sure that she knows that she's in a safe environment, she's in a safe place. And whenever she ends up watching the movie like Mustang, I can promise her that I promise you this will never happen to you.
Absolutely.
That's
I think it's a movie about perseverance, about survival, and again, that sisterhood, whether it's by blood or of the heart, that can help young girls and women continue to survive and thrive and find their voices. So it was just such a pleasure to see this film, to pick it for our as one of the curated picks, and also to discuss it with you. And I'm so glad we've gotten to know each other a little bit better through the film.
yes, yeah. I'm glad it was really a pleasure talking to you and discussing this beautiful film.